Yo, this is Joe Mustin from Beloved, Advent, and The Almost, and you are listening to the Rumors Are True podcast. Welcome, this is Jeremy Allen Gould, and I'm coming to you today to confirm between God and of man that the rumors you have all heard are true. I started this podcast to have a platform for the bands and artists that I've worked with in the past, as well as new musicians and artists that influenced myself and many others. The Rumors Are True podcast is an opportunity for the artists to tell their story their way. I'm still in the business of confirming rumors. I still love a good conversation, and I still freaking love music. So thanks again for joining me on this journey, and I hope you like what you hear. With that said, the rumors are definitely true. Thank you for tuning in to this latest episode of the Rumors Are True podcast. My name is Jeremy, and today I welcome Brandon Mullins. You know Brandon from the bands Cross 5 Aprils and Embrace. Awesome conversation with Brandon. So stoked to have him on this podcast to hear his perspective on the bands he's been a part of and the record he's been a part of. So I hope you enjoy this latest episode with Brandon Mullins. Brandon, what is up, my friend? Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Happy to be here, man. I appreciate you taking the time to chew the fat a little bit.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know we've been talking about doing this for a little bit, and really excited to hear your perspective and just kind of your journey. So, yeah, thank you again for coming on the podcast. I really
happy to be here, man. I'm excited about it.
Awesome, man. Well, tell me what's going on in your world currently. What's new in your world?
Yeah, keeping real busy. So, in my real life, right, I'm the 4th and 5th grade teacher at a little independent school down here in Clearwater, Florida. And during the summers, I am the summer camp director. So we are here. We're doing summer camp. I guarantee I get a few texts about, behavior stuff that I'll have to figure out later. But I'm right in the thick of it. And we've got one more week of summer camp left, and then the school year starts back up. So I'm just rolling right into it, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Do you love that?
Yeah, I feel like I fell into education, and I always knew I wanted to work with kids. And from a real young age, I was working with kids in nurseries and in arts and science museum when I was going to school and internships, and didn't know I wanted to be a teacher, and kind of fell into it. I was substitute teaching to figure out what I wanted to do, and the principal was like, "Hey, you're okay at this. You want a full-time gig?" And I was like, "Sure, I'll try it out." And then the next year, I won Teacher of the Year for the whole county.
Wow.
And did pretty good, and use that as a little springboard to get to some other gigs because I'm a marine science guy. So I worked at Shed Aquarium for a little bit, and then the Florida Aquarium for a little bit. But I really missed that relationship you build with a family over the course of a year. So I came back into education. I've been here for almost 10 years now.
That's amazing. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, I cut you off.
No, I really do. I mean, kids keep you young. I'm still tragically unhip, but they make me feel like I was cool at one point in time.
But you were on Victory Records, so you were cool at some point, right?
I promise. My fifth graders don't care about that in the slightest. Or, it's funny. There's a point in the year where somebody will come in, they get a little squinty eyed, and they'll be like, "Are you in a band, Mr. Mullins?" And I'm like, "Okay, all right, let's have this conversation." But
That's amazing.
I try not to steer them in the direction until the last week of school when you're always looking for that stuff to do, and I'll play them like a handful of songs, and I let them write down their honest, like unfiltered opinions. And sometimes they're really funny and like mean, and so we read them. The band gets together for Thanksgiving every year for like a Friendsgiving, and we read them like mean tweets, and like we put it out on social.
Incredible.
It's so funny. It's always a good time.
That's so awesome. It's funny because a lot of people I feel like that I've had on this podcast have gotten into some sort of job like that, at some education job. Do you think maybe the road prepared you for that in some way, shape, or form? Just kind of being in a van with 5-6 dudes, kind of just navigating through personalities?
That's an interesting question. I've noticed that too, right? Like some of the guys from Evergreen and like Stretch Armstrong. There's a bunch of them that are educators. I wonder initially if it was, hey, you get summers off. We can tour in the summer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that's a piece of it. But yeah, there's some things that translate for sure. Like I'm a pretty authentic guy trying to like fake it at all. But you're different on stage. You got to put on like the frontman persona, and the reach the crowd kind of thing. And you absolutely have to do that in a classroom full of kids, you own the stage kind of thing. So I think about that every now and then. And I still play guitar and sing silly songs to my fifth graders to keep them like hooked. And once they figure out I'm in a band, you get a little bit of cred for a while. And so I ride that hard, to make sure that they're following along and stuff. But eventually they realize I'm not that cool.
Do you think you'll stay in that elementary age, or do you think would ever want to do high school or middle school?
I am in love with upper elementary. Like I got to sub, right? So I told you I did some subbing, and I did all of the grades and all of the subjects. I've always been a marine science guy, and so I tried to wiggle my way into something like that. So I've been asked a couple of times to go like to middle school, but middle schoolers are terrible people, and I'm not interested in that at all. So no, probably not that. I think I could teach younger, but fourth and fifth grade, they seem to like, it's the sweet spot, right? So they're starting to get the jokes, and they're starting to think you're kind of funny, and you can capture their attention. They're not totally jaded by the education system yet. So it's just a good sweet spot. I really enjoy upper elementary.
That's awesome, man. Well, that's encouraging to hear. And I love that you're passionate about it. It sounds cool. I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that you, are doing something that you feel good about and you love. So that's cool.
Yeah.
I love hearing that, man.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about you growing up. Growing up, bands, records, influences, shows. Like what, bring me through your young age and kind of how music kind of came into your life.
Yeah, I love that. I think from a very young age, I grew up in a musical household, right? So my mom was born in West Virginia, but quickly moved to Macon, Georgia, home of the Allman Brothers, and like partied with those guys all the time, right?
Wow.
So like grew up with the Allman Brothers, and that Southern rock was kind of like in her belly at all times. And my dad, credit to him, I feel like he came from a little town called Leroy, Illinois, podunk, kind of redneck, and it's easy to think that there's one specific type of music that you would listen to, but he gave me his record collection years ago, and like it spans the gamut, man, like all the stuff, and we listened to it all growing up. So my influences, it may sound strange, but like from an early age, I was heavily influenced by like Marvin Gaye, the Righteous Brothers, Allman Brothers, Hall & Oates, kind of like anything that had some soul to it. I really appreciate the vibrato.
Yeah.
Anytime, and anything with a good saxophone solo, right? Like I love Kenny G growing up. Silver Bullet Band. Like we need more saxophones in music these days. But I kind of grew up in more of like a classic, traditional kind of music. All of the stuff that you would expect, and Sam Cooke, so anything with soul. And then I got into middle school, and I expanded into some like the R&B world. Like I really loved like BBD and Bell Biv DeVoe and Boyz II Men and that kind of stuff. Yeah. I remember I didn't know much about the underground scene, right? And I had some friends that like listened to quote unquote heavy music, and I remember I was talking to some buddies like, what's the like heaviest? I was attracted to the idea of it being like edgy, right? So like, what's the heaviest rap band? And somebody turned me on to like Wu-Tang Clan, and I remember thinking, okay, I can dig that. And then I asked somebody else, and they're like, try Korn, and I was like, well, I listened to it and heavy, but like it didn't sit super in my soul. And so we bounced around because I was in a military family, and that was born in Florida and then moved to Virginia and Italy, and about 10th or 11th grade, I moved to Panama City. That's home for me, Panama City, Florida. And was looking for my people, and kind of fell in with like the skateboarding crowd because I skated a little bit, 17th Street Surf Stop up in Virginia Beach, and really enjoyed that kind of alternative scene. And I got hooked up with some good friends, like the good friends, like the good people, and the crew that I was pretty excited to hang with, and they were interested in like punk rock. And I was like, well, sure, I like punk rock. I had no idea, didn't know what punk rock. Some of the earliest memories were like Operation Ivy, like I listened to Op Ivy, and AFI. Really liked early AFI, and that was really big in my circle of friends. And I think the gateway drug for me was MXPX. I love
Great
MXPX. I mean, everything that band's ever touched is just like lived. It's the soundtrack of my youth, really. Yeah. And so I bounced around like Warped Tour scene, really enjoyed that, and the catchiness of it, the melodies, like early No Effects. I really loved like So Long and Thanks for All the Shoes. And again, like the Warped Tour scene that was pretty popular then. Still not super underground at that point, like kind of more mainstream punk rock, but really, really loved like the community of it all. Yeah. And it was interesting. Yeah, the hardcore scene's got such a great community, but punk rock also has that similar community, and I liked that part of it too. And I remember a buddy of mine brought home a Zayo record, like the first one. And I was like, what is this? Hold on just a second. What is this? And loved it. Of course I loved it. It was like track one. It blew my mind. And then, the follow-up record to that one it was different. It was more metal than hardcore, And I remember thinking, I like all of this stuff. Is there more of this out there? So I got into a few different bands in that genre, right? So early Under Oath, we were good friends with them when we first started. My first band started touring, but that's kind of how I got into the heavy music scene. It was like punk rock and then metal, and then the band that I think changed my life and like found my favorite style of hardcore was Hope's Fall. Oh, amazing! Yeah. I mean, there's no other band that does it better than Hope's Fall, and once I heard Hope's Fall, that's the only vein I was interested in. That was the right one, and I enjoy it all. I think the band's real too, but Hope's Fall is what really. This is who I found. I found my calling. This is the band, Hope's Fall. Yeah. But again, I love that I love that I have a pretty eclectic palette. I listen to all of the above. Death Cab for Cutie really resonates with Translanticism is a perfect, flawless. Yeah, love like early Weezer, Pinkerton and the Blue Album, or Magic, and there's a lot of really good bands that came out of the Panama City and the Panhandle area that I really love. Remember 238?
I do. I know Jake. I know Jake and Chris. Yeah.
That band, I was listening to them the other day. That record, you put it on today, people would think it was recorded yesterday. Yeah, it's incredible. Flawless. Yeah. It's Regulate the Chemicals. Yeah, it's amazing. It's a perfect record. It's a perfect record.
Absolutely.
So I love that and I think in some of my bands you kind of hear that, like you've got a lot of these different genres that come through, and I like my eclectic palette. I'm not pigeonholed. I listen to it. Yeah. I listen to everything.
Do you know Jeremy Griffith?
Name sounds familiar, huh?
So he's from Fort Walton area. He's a producer now. He did the newest Under Oath, I think.
Okay.
He was in Moments in Grace, which was
I'm familiar.
Jake from 238 and stuff. I didn't know if you knew him because he was from that area, but
I was in Panama City, and Pensacola was like a different scene, and we got in tight with the Glory of This Guys, and that was kind of our.
Oh yeah, I remember that band. Yeah.
Yeah, we just played a reunion show with them not too long ago. Really good guys, and so I knew of those guys, but they had their own thing going on, and we're not competitive, like a friendly rivalry between scenes. So we were like, we're the Panama City scene, and Pensacola had their. So I think we knew of each other and had mutual respect.
Yeah,
but I would have loved to have been really good friends with Chris Staples. I think we would have been
Chris
good buddies.
Awesome, he's hilarious.
Yeah, he's funny.
Well, let's talk. You kind of talk about this music influencing you. Well, let's talk about your first band, Embraced. Loved this band, by the way. When you told me the other day, I was like floored. My jaw dropped. I was like, oh my god, I freaking love this band. Talk me through you guys finding each other. It sounds like Hope's Fall was a big influence. Now that you've said that, it totally makes complete sense to me.
That was a little later on, though. Yeah, Embrace again. That was my baby. I helped birth Embrace, right? So it started really early with that same group of friends I was telling you about, all the skater kids that love to hang out, and we all liked punk rock. So we were trying to play some punk rock. And early on, prior to my joining the band, they had another. They're going to listen to this and get a kick out of all the fun stuff. But they had a band that was a punk rock band that they called Barded Lags. What a terrible name. I mean, but I remember wanting to hang out with them, so I was like, I'll be your manager, the manager. I'll hold the money box kind of thing,
I've been there.
And so they were punk rock in like AFI style punk rock. And another guy, Josh Smith, who's a friend of mine, used to sing for that band. And, they were just doing like house shows and stuff like that, just for fun, just to kind of be anti-establishment. And then Josh had to go do his own thing, and they asked me to come and be a part of it, and they wanted to change the name, and they played with the name A Tonal Spiral for a little bit. A Tonal Spiral. And it didn't really stick, and then we went and saw Hopes Fall in Fort Walton Beach, and I remember thinking, this is it, guys. Yeah. This is the kind of music we need to be doing. At that point, I was playing keyboard for them. I was playing keyboard. Yeah, I was just trying hard to get on stage with them at some point. And then they found out I could carry a tune and that I had some vocal training, and they were like, well, let's try him at vocals kind of thing. And they were like, oh, this is the move. Let's keep him up front. And so we saw Hopes Fall on that. They were touring on their very first release.
Frailty? Oh yeah,
Frail.
Game changer.
It was beautiful. It was, and just and it was chaotic but beautiful, and we didn't see anything like it, and you fell in love with it, and immediately started to change our sound a little bit. And they were like, our sound doesn't fit A Tonal Spiral. We got to change the name. And so we bounced around with a few different names. And if you're a Panhandle person or an Embraced fan, you might recall we played one show under the name Jana with Water. And I loved that name. I loved it. I still, to this day, that's my side project that not a ton of people know about.
Jana
we played
with
some,
Water?
Jana with Water, yeah. We've played like a couple of little shows. It's more like acoustic, kind of like singer-songwriter stuff. But I loved that I had that, and I loved it. And we were Jana with Water, and then they kind of changed their mind like mid-set. They were like, no, this doesn't feel good. And then Embrace was one without the D, and there was already a band called Embrace. And so we settled with Embraced, and it stuck and it worked. It was a one word, and it seemed people seemed to remember it, and we put it in a pretty font, two cursive fonts on top of each other, and it just stuck. We liked it a lot. So that's where the name came from, and it didn't change since. But we went through a few different iterations: Barded Lags, A Tonal Spiral, Jana with Water, and then Embraced was on.
Well, so you obviously start this band, and I feel like Embraced kind of follows that Hopes Fall-esque-ness of it all. Was the music, I know you said you obviously discovered Hopes Fall, and that was like, we've got to do this. Was it easy to start writing music like that, or did it make sense? Did it click?
Yeah, I mean, not right away. And again, I had such an eclectic kind of like musical spectrum, and I can't do what Doug could do, so we weren't trying to copy them necessarily, although I know there's some, we sound very similar, I should say, that same genre. Influence. But we wanted to be our own band for sure. And the singing stuff that we brought to it and the melodies that we brought to it were just different, Sure. And so we tried to make it stand on its own 2 feet, but I knew what I was good at and I knew what I wasn't good at. And so I was trying to play to my strengths. And so a lot of the clean singy stuff on that record, the big airy kind of singy stuff on that record, I was stoked to do. The big breath kind of singing, The screamy stuff I kind of had to find my way through, like the heavy vocal. If you listen to that record, so the first song on that record is Saratoga. And if you listen to it and compare it to every other song on the record, the vocals are kind of different, they just sound different. And that's because that was the first song I recorded, and I was still trying to find my rhythm, find my tone, and I'm happy with it. But if I had to do all over again, I might have re-recorded the vocals on that one just to make it match a little bit.
Yeah.
We were just, again, kind of fell into it, like we were skateboard kids doing punk rock, and then we thought we could do this, and we liked the heavy stuff, and so we started with the chugs and the breakdowns, and that record, I'm really proud of that record. Yeah. But if you listen to it, it doesn't follow any kind of a pattern. There's no like verse, chorus, refrain, or anything like that. It's just stick a bunch of parts together and try to make it sound pretty.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let me ask you this real quick before we get into the record. Theory 8. You signed with them. What's how does a band with nothing? I mean, I'm assuming you did demos and whatnot, but how do you get signed to this? Is this the only label that's available? Are you stoked? Are you like, oh my god, we're signed already? What was that like?
Yeah, at the time, we weren't really shopping to record labels because we didn't really know what that looked like. But we had been approached by a Canadian record label. I'm forgetting the name of the label at the time, but they were like, "Hey, we've heard some of your demos. Can we put a song out on a sampleation or a compilation, the sample compilation that we're doing?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, for sure." And I remember some of the other guys were still nervous about it, like, "I don't know, is it ready?" That kind of stuff. And I was like, "No, just put it out there. Let people listen to it." And once that got out, it got some pretty good distro. It went like all over North America, and a couple of people reached out, but we didn't know anything about the industry. But we knew this guy, Aaron Hartley, who had been chatting with us through Theory 8 for a while, and he had just put out another record with a band called Copeland on it that we thought was really good. That was way before they got super popular. Copeland and Pacifico did a split.
I know, Matt.
Exactly right. Yeah. And it sounded so great, and we were like, "Yeah, let's get associated with this situation." And so he offered to do our first record, and it was we did it on nothing. I think he gave us like $3,000 or something. It wasn't much at all. And we spent a week at the studio in Panama City, Florida, Boogie Tracks Studio. The sign is still there, but the studio is not. JJ Watts recorded us, and he's passed away since then, but he was a really good guy and had no idea what hardcore was, which I thought was kind of cool because he was kind of hearing it with fresh ears. Yeah. And so he had done a bunch of big like R&B acts and rap and hip hop and things like that. And so he was stoked to get any kind of a rock band. And we didn't know anything about studio at the time. We just knew it was close and we could do it on our budget. And so he cut us a little bit of a deal because he had never done this style of music and he wanted some more rock bands in there. And also we were local and he was excited to kind of help us out. Also, he ended up marrying one of the girls that did some guest vocals on that record. And so I think he was excited that we had some ladies around us. And so he was yeah, come on, we'll cut you a deal. And so we went to the studio. I think we were only there, not super long, like maybe 2 weeks, week and a half, 2 weeks.
That's a lot for that time, if you think about it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. And it was a professional studio. His father had apparently done some other engineering and had a bunch of like state-of-the-art equipment. And I think he had done something with like early Backstreet Boys at one point in time too. So, like he knew people and like had the right stuff. And we were just felt like total rock stars in this really nice studio. New equipment and stuff, and we just gave it everything we had. And again, I was a new vocalist I had been singing my whole life, but the hardcore vocals were a little different, and I was having trouble getting to the growl, and it was right next to a gas station, and I remember I finally found it, and they were like, "Oh yeah, that's the sound, keep that one." And I was like, "I need orange juice stat," and I had to run over and get like orange juice and Gatorade so I could like keep that kind of flimmy thing going on. That was a good time.
Did it turn out the way you guys wanted it to, or did you have this vision of what it, or were you just kind of like, hey, let's see where this goes?
I would think that if Ryan were here, he would say he always had a vision. For me, I was just living in the moment. I thought it was so cool to be doing all of the above. So we were trying to find a sound and make it all fit together and then make it sound pretty. But I was really looking at JJ, the producer, saying, hey, here's what I can do. Can you make it sound better? And he kind of got it. He didn't understand why there was no no verse. And he goes, at one point he was like, oh, I get it. The heavy part, the breakdowns are the catch. And we were like, yeah, that's the idea. Like, oh, okay, I think I can do that. And so he, was experimenting with like double kick for the first time. And no, I don't think we had a plan really. We were very proud and excited when it got done that, it sounded way cleaner and better than any demo we had ever done, like in a garage. So we were in love with it. And Aaron Hartley, the guy that owned Theory 8, was really excited about it too.
He had to be. Because I remember discovering it myself. I don't even know how man, I literally, truly, it's one of those, I don't even know how. I think I got it on LimeWire or something stupid.
Sure.
And I was like, oh my God, this is incredible. I mean, you kind of mentioned, obviously you're really proud of it. Yeah, looking back on it, just, overall, how do you feel about it?
I think it was so wonderful that we kind of modeled ourselves a little bit after Hopesfall for sure, but we were at the very early part of all of that. Yeah. It's not like we heard bands way on and started copying them. We were on the first crest, if you will, of like that that melodic hardcore wave. And so when this record came out, I think it kind of like got shuffled in with all of the bands that were doing it, you know? Yeah. And so when that happened, we were proud of the record and given it to anybody who would take it and listen. We got some pretty awesome tours and basically hadn't done a lot of touring. So when we would go on these pretty decent sized tours with some other really reputable bands, one of our first tours was Hope's Fall. We ended up hopping on, like we got it together pretty quick, and they came back to Florida, and we did a couple of dates with them, and then we did like a month with Under Oath and Beloved and Amber Lynn on their first tour right after. Yeah, and who else was on the bill? Copeland, yeah. It's all these kind of like Florida-centric bands, if you will, for the most part, and you know we just had. Again, that early sound, and we were willing to get in a car and drive. And you know, I get asked that question a lot on podcasts, like, "What would you tell the up and coming?" And I wouldn't do this nowadays because it doesn't make any sense. Back in the day, you just got in a car and drove. Yeah. You played for anybody that wanted you. Yeah. 4 kids, it didn't matter. And I think that was really what helped us at the early on, is to put it out there. And because we were one of the few bands that A, sounded like that, and B, was willing to travel outside of our little circle of influence, we could kind of get a little bit of a reach.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you guys feel like you had a buzz at some point? I mean, and I don't mean that in a cocky way, but I feel like if I was in the Midwest and I discovered you, I know there had to be other areas, you know what I mean? So, yeah, what was that like? I mean, did you, on those tours, were people into it? Were they like, whoa, this band, you know, what was that like?
Yeah, for sure. Again, I don't think we recognized at the time that we had a little bit of a buzz, but we totally did. In retrospect, looking back, we ended up playing with some really big bands on some really big fests, and I mean, really early on. And because the band didn't last as long as it maybe we all wished that it would have, there's a lot of like, what if? You know, like what if? Because some of our contemporaries at the time stuck it out and did really well, you know, and I don't know if that would have been us, but it would have been nice to have seen if it could have been possible, you know?
Absolutely. What led to the end of the band, just out of curiosity? I mean, you just mentioned it, and obviously you guys are on a pretty good trajectory, and then, you're no more.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see when the other guys listen to it, because we're all friends now. We've gotten this out of the way, but it was not amicable. This was back in the day. I think what happened, if I understand everybody's version of events, they thought that, or some of them thought that maybe I was a problem. Like I was like getting too big for my britches kind of thing. And I clearly, I make mistakes all the time, you know, but I didn't feel that way. And I think that they were having internal discussions about talking to me about it, right? Like, hey, you got frontman syndrome kind of thing, you know, like, can we figure it out? But that quickly, I guess somebody interpreted it differently. And back when AIM was a thing, I got kicked out of the band on AIM. Oh, my. Yeah, I was, this is super embarrassing, but I was working as the Easter Bunny in the Panama City Mall, like the big head and everything. My friend Natasha came up and I was on break and she was saying, hey, I'm just so sorry to hear. And I'm like, what are we talking about? Come again? And she was like, oh, the band, man, I'm sorry to hear about it. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And she got tight-lipped then because she realized that I didn't know what was going on. And so I messaged them on AIM. And they were like, yeah, man, you're gone. Sorry. Goodbye. And didn't really give me any explanation. It was clear that like they were done. And I think it was Jonathan that kicked me out. And the other guys, I messaged them quickly. And I think that they had all talked to each other, say like, no, we got to be in solidarity. Yeah. Nobody's backing out now. And so they kind of put up that front of, no, we're done. But, you know, we were not friends for a while or something dumb like that. But we did come back around and we've all chatted about it. And they were like, we didn't do it the right way. It was dumb. All young.
I mean, that's to be expected, unfortunately. Yeah. You know, you don't have that adult mindset and know how to communicate well. You know, it's just it is what it is.
That's exactly right. Young and dumb and didn't make anyway. They tried to make Embraced work without me, and I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, but they were trying to all kind of do different parts to do what I did vocally, and they would also admit that it didn't work. And they took one more final tour out to California and realized that like it wasn't quite the same, and they didn't have a front man. They were all playing instruments and trying to make it work, and it just had a different vibe to it, and it didn't stick around. But it, so when they came back, they kind of called it quits. But we were having some interest at the time. I mean, some major labels were reaching out, trying to like poking. Gosh, who was? Ryan has all the information on it, but I mean, some like not just independent records, not independent labels, some like majors were interested. I won't say they were trying to sign us to some multi-record deal, but they had heard of us and like they were realizing that like hardcore was doing something, you know. I remember some of them. I want to say like Hi-Fi Records was one of them. I could be wrong, but it was, you know, we didn't hear much about it, and I certainly didn't hear anything about it because I had been kicked out right as they were about to go on that California tour. And I think they may have showcased for some people while they went on that California leg, but it didn't work, and they came back and they kind of went their separate ways to do their own thing. But we have since reunited a few times. We reunited 10 years after that and had one really big reunion show that was a lot of fun. And then we did it again like 6 years later. And our most recent reunion was 2 years ago at Panhandle Panic Fest in Panama City.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm. So they asked us to headline, and of course, we as soon as we knew everybody was on board, we did it, and it was just the best time. We got to play with all of our friends from back in the day, and Better Than Bullets got back together, and Ambush, and you know, a bunch of those Panama City bands that we grew up with, and who else played that? Evergreen Terrace, I think, was on.
Those guys. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we've been really good friends coming back together through that. So I'm glad we grew up a little bit. We have a family chat that we all keep in touch with, and we were talking yesterday.
Well, I mean, would you guys ever think about doing a record again, just out of curiosity? I know you guys are in different places, so it would be kind of cool to see what might have been.
Yeah, I know everybody's answer on this one. I am always game. You know what I mean? I think it would be so much fun to make that happen. I think Ryan is probably the one we would have to convince. Yeah. I love him. I'm not talking any trash on him. Really good guy. He is the creative purist, you know? And I think that if he was going to do a record with Embraced again, it would just take so much from him emotionally, you know? And I don't know if it would feel the same way. So I won't say never. I think that we could get there if the stars aligned. But I know Jonathan would do it tomorrow, you know? And yeah, so I think that's kind of where we are with that one. I don't envision that there would be another Embraced record, but everybody's making music. Steve went on playing Go Radio, and he did Don't Die Cindy for a while too, and Go Radio made it pretty big, and he's currently in a project called Be Nice to People. Have you heard anything from them? They you know, it's really chill music. It reminds me, and I wonder what Steve would say about it, of like a band that puts music out in hopes that it'll get on commercials. It's that kind of music. That's awesome. Yeah, it's good. It's good, and I love their platform of like you wanting to be kind. You know, they just like good-headed people. And Jonathan's up there in Birmingham crushing it. You know, he's doing production stuff, and he does catering, and he rents equipment. And whenever Furnace Fest rolls through, he rents the studio out to all the bands that come in. So he'll send us little clips of like you know some big band practicing in his basement. Awesome. He loves it. Yeah, and Jared's just being a dad, straight up dad in Panama City, living that life. He's got like 100 kids now, and Steve's still playing drums, and me, I'm kind of doing my thing.
That's awesome, man. You know, this never got put on vinyl. Would that ever be an option as well? I've always thought that would be really cool.
It did get put on vinyl.
I didn't know that. Where at?
Yeah, it did. For our second reunion, we decided to do, I think it was like a 20-year or 15-year like anniversary kind of thing. So it's for sale. You can find it on. Yeah, I've got a couple of copies. I'll send you one.
Yeah. Who'd put it out? You guys?
Ryan was in charge of it. No, so Aaron Hartley, Theory helped put it out.
Okay, I got you. I didn't know if it was like, I did not know that. I was clueless. I feel like an idiot. But
It's all good, man. I mean, vinyl's one of those things. Like every band I know wants to have their stuff on vinyl, and collectors love that stuff. But it's not like a hot ticket, you know. It's not like what you're making money on at the merch table. So
it's just nice to have that, you know, that physical, tangible thing that you guys put so much effort into. You know, I think that's cool.
When we got it in, it's big, you know. So you're like holding it and feel so proud of it, you know.
Should, man. Like I said, when I discovered it, I was in the Midwest, and I just remember vividly hearing it and being like blown away, because I loved Hope's Fall at the time as well. So it was like, to me, it was discovering all those types of bands that, you know, were in that vein, that melodic but heavy, and you guys were one of those. And I just remember listening to that record all the time.
There was an appetite for that music. So again, we got in kind of early. So I love that people were like, you know, really devouring it, and it made us happy.
That's cool, man. Again, like when you told me the other day, I was like, whoa, that's so awesome. I'm so stoked to talk to you. I mean, I had planned, you know, been stoked to talk to you anyway, but it was like, man, that's just another facet. Hey, this is Jeremy with the Rumors Are True podcast. Are you looking to spice up your meals with something real? Introducing Voyager Hot Sauce. Born in Seattle, rooted in the heart of Jalisco, Mexico, and built on community, quality, and excellence. Crafted in fresh small batches with agave nectar for the perfect sweet heat. Voyager is more than just a hot sauce. It's a symbol of gathering, authentic connection, and flavor that brings people together. Whether it's tacos, eggs, pizza, or cocktails, Voyager goes on everything. Head over to VoyagerHotSauce.com to hear their story, explore recipes, and place your order today. You left the band. Obviously, real briefly, I mean, were you heartbroken? Were you bummed? Were you...
Yeah. I mean, heartbroken is the right word for it, and like bitter and like immature and like not nice at all. I remember we all had this. It's like losing somebody in a divorce, really. We were still all friends with the same people, and I was living in Tallahassee at the time, going to school at Florida State, and my go Knowles. And my roommates at the time, Abby and Exanthea, were still good friends to this day. And I loved that I lived with girls because they were like clean and like smelled good, And so they were still friends with them, and I would go and meet up with friends in other bands and go on the road with them on occasion just for fun. And they would call me and they'd be like, "Hey, the guys are going to come over and spend the night at the apartment. Is that okay?" And I remember being really, really rude and no, never. They can't touch any of my stuff, Super immature about it. And at one point I knew they were coming over, and I slipped a penny under my door and like put it up so that if it opened, it would fall on the ground, And I came up, I was like, "That's a penny fell. How dare you?" But yeah, I was really immature and bitter about it for a while. But I love that we've come full circle. Yeah. And Embraced was on tour with Under Oath and some other bands, and we played in a little town called Athens, Georgia. And a band that opened for that tour package was a band called Across 5 Aprils. And I remember hanging out with those guys for a little bit and thinking, yeah, they're cool guys, and like the Chattanooga scene, that kind of thing. And, we talked a few times, but didn't know much about them after that, And then when the band called it quits, it wasn't about 5 or 6 months later that I got a call from those guys like, "Hey, we hear that you're out of the band situation. What do you think about?" And I remember being bitter enough to be like, "Yeah, I'll show them. I'll show them." But it ended up being a really good move.
Yeah, awesome. Across 5 Aprils, at the time, well, I think they were in Indianola at that point, right?
Yeah, They had they had put out A Tragedy in Progress and were touring on that, and were in the process of recording an EP that was about to come out. And the EP did come out when I officially joined the band. And they had asked me to be a part of the band. I was so Jason Fields recorded, and he was the original guitar player in Across 5 Aprils, and recorded on A Tragedy in Progress. And we were living together in Tallahassee at the time. And when he wasn't in the band anymore though, but when the band had called me to invite me to it, he thought that they were going to re-invite him to be in the band, and he was kind of a little bitter about it too at the time, but we ended up working through it. We're still really good friends to this day, and now it's come full circle. He's in the current version of the band now too, and really incestuous in a weird way. Everybody knows everybody, but yeah. So I was in school at Florida State, and I was about a year away from graduating, maybe a little less than a year. And I remember thinking, this is the time. Let me just do it. I can always come back to it if I want to. And so I quit, and we toured for about 6 years.
What was that like joining an already established band? I know you had started Embraced by yourself, with your friends. Joining another band, what was the dynamic like? What was that like for you? Was it cool? Was it seamless?
It was different for sure. Embraced was my baby, and I kind of helped birth it, right? So it was totally different coming into a situation where a record that had done well on its own already existed, and they had a fan base. And so I carried some of the weight of, are they going to accept me? Is this going to be okay? And that record, A Tragedy in Progress, was a staple, and people knew that record, and it had some songs on it that, was on a bunch of different samplers. So I remember feeling the weight of that. I wasn't necessarily nervous because I can get in front of anybody and sing and be a ham bone. That's not a problem. But I wanted to make sure that I was doing them justice, that I could do. And so those were some of the conversations we had early on with Drew, especially the drummer, who in a lot of ways is the brain of the band, if that's the right. I would say Zach is kind of the heartbeat, but Drew tends to be the motor and the brain of the band. And my questions for him were, is this going to be okay? Like, what if I don't do it the way that it's always been done? And they were, to their credit, just super welcoming. They said, we did it this way. We want to do it this way. And we think that you're the guy to take us in that direction. And we love what you can do vocally. And we'll figure all the other stuff out.
Awesome.
And I thought it was very cool of them. And our first show was somewhere in Indiana. Then it was with Calico System.
I think
I love those.
But I mean, I don't remember. It's been so. I know for sure I booked Calico System. I feel like you guys were on.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
Yeah, could have been because that would have been one of my first. Well, we went there several times, but it was them in the Burning season, and then we were one of the openers on it. And so I was just trying to get through, remembering all the words, and kids got into it. And I would say show 2 or 3, it felt very apparent that I was gonna fit in.
I love that, dude.
Yeah.
That's cool that they were cool enough to let you do your thing and it organically happen, as opposed to trying to force a square in a round hole type of thing.
Yeah. I some other bands do this too, but one thing I really love about Across of Aprils and anything we've ever put out is that we have a sound. You can listen to an A5A song and know that it's us, but every record's got a different pulse to it. Like we aren't that cookie cutter band that does it the same way every time. We tried really hard to have a different soul in each record, and you can hear that. And I think that's credit to them for saying, we don't need the cookie cutter approach. Let's make music we want to make. And I think that's
well, let's talk about the Collapse record. You joined the band. Do you start writing with them pretty instantly, or does it take a little bit of time? And kind of bring me through that record and your part of writing in that.
Yeah, so we did not start writing immediately, mainly because I was still trying to make sure that I had front end duties down and knew all the words of the stuff that existed already. So when we broached the idea of recording another record, we had that conversation because we were still on Indianola and we love those guys. John and Matt, we're still good friends. He lives right up the road. We hang out every now and then. He is a crazy person, but I love him. And we had conversations early on, like, do we want to do this with Indianola? Do we want to try to take the leap here? And we shopped around and we were talking to some people, but nothing felt quite as home as what they kept saying, because John and Matt, are so good at the distro game. They don't really have a head for the producing part of it. So they would just say, we trust you, and here's what we can do. And whenever we would come back to them and say, well, we might need this too, they would just, okay, let's make it happen. So we felt that we could work with them really easily. And not that that's why you should do anything like the easiest route, but I loved that they were so supportive in every facet. So we decided to stick with Indianola on that one, and they laid out a plan for, distro and tour support and things like that. And it just felt the right thing to do. And we recorded with Lee Dice at Earth Sound Studios in Valdosta. And Lee is awesome. I've gotten to do some guest vocals on some projects with him since then, and it's been fun catching up. But he had just finished recording From First to Last, and it was before they got real big. So they were still in the studio, and we kind of got to know them a little bit. And it was a little bit of the keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like, what are they doing? And like, what are we going to do that's different than that? Are we going to be better? It was funny, but I remember really loving that process. And we had come in to the studio really only having a couple of songs, and wrote the rest in the studio. We were there for a while. Gosh, maybe a month. We were there for a hot minute.
For that time frame.
I could be wrong, but again, Matt and John were from Valdosta, so we could stay with them, or get put up in a hotel that they were friends with the guy that owned it or something, and it didn't cost them a ton out of pocket. And Lee was willing to,
work with
be patient with us, trying to figure it out with a new guy. They all kind of did their thing. So Drew and Zach would do a lot of the guitar parts, and then we'd lay down drums. And I was just excited to try to up the vocal game. You know what I mean? Because Steve has a great voice, and that hardcore part of him is awesome, and he can sing too. But I felt that I have a different range than Steve, and I really enjoyed being able to kind of do that big, breathy, kind of ambient vocal and Lee was all about it. So he let me be creative on a few different tracks, and I think you can hear it on there. You're Not Alone. It's got some really cool vocal stuff on it. Mistress has got some cool stuff on it, and Let's Whisper. One of the songs we still play live. Heavy, but also has a hook to it. We learned about hook in A5A. We tried to find the hook.
Absolutely, man. Well, was that tough going into the studio and not having everything written? Did you feel any pressure, or did you feel like it worked? And was it hard to write the rest of that record?
It wasn't hard. I didn't feel much pressure on that record at all because I was with my buddies, and again, Matt and John made it feel so home that we could just kind of hang out and write songs and change them. And I remember what song was it? It might have been "You're Not Alone." There was a different chorus that I had written, and I went in there and I laid it down. And they can turn the mic off and then talk to each other, and you can't hear what they're saying on the other side of the glass. And they came back on and they're like, "Yeah, that sucks. We don't want that. We need to change those lyrics." And a lot of people might have been really hurt. And I just remember thinking, okay, sure. So I just kind of went back to the drawing board and wrote some lyrics and was able to come up with it pretty quick because I was in this good headspace and felt good around my friends. And we were, at the time, touring full time, right? So I didn't really have a, so to speak. So I could kind of live in the studio, and it felt really natural and normal. So I did not feel pressured at all to write that record. And I'm really proud of some of the stuff that came out of that one.
How did you feel about it then, and kind of overall now?
I was super proud of it then. I loved that it was a departure a little bit. Again, we tried to do a different take on it every time, but it was all the things that we do well, and we tried to get rid of some of the things that maybe we don't do well. And I didn't really think of it as a follow-up or a sophomore, record for A5A. I just thought, this is my first attempt. Let's give it a shot and see what happens. And I listened to that record today, and I think any musician would tell you, if I had it to do again, there's things that I would do differently. There's some breathing patterns on Let's Whisper that I would do different. I was sick as I could possibly be. We recorded one of those tracks, Mistress, and you can hear it, like it's all nasal, and I was trying so hard. I'm like laying on my back trying to get all the snot to like flow out of me while I'm recording that song. And so I bet if I could do that one again, it would sound different, But it stands, I could nitpick things all day long, but I'm very proud of it.
Man, was Indianola pumped on it, and did it do pretty well?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't do as well as maybe they had hoped as the first record did. That kind of stood on its own, but it had a bigger distro. So numbers wise, it sold just about as many initially, but it didn't cling with fans as well as A Tragedy in Progress did. And I recognize that, and I kind of knew that might be the case.
Sure.
Because you've got those old school. And I'm the same way with any band that puts out a second record. No, the first record's the best. You want that first record. So I kind of knew that might be the case, and it didn't hurt my feelings. But we were able to use that as a springboard to do some bigger things with the band. So Collapse really took us to like an international level. Again, could have been the distro or just the vocal change or whatever. But we ended up getting in with some labels and some people across the pond, and so we ended up going to Europe a couple of times and went to Canada and Mexico and Japan and all these places that I don't think otherwise we would have been able to. And although when we got over to those places, they knew all the songs, they mostly had Collapse because the distro was able to get there.
That's cool.
So that felt good too, and they were singing along the songs that I helped write.
Totally.
With the guys.
What was the touring like for this cycle? Were you getting on bigger tours, bigger shows? What was it like?
Yeah, I feel like it was hit or miss. Like we would either get like a mid-sized tour that came with pretty decent money that we could like survive, or a big tour that maybe you weren't getting much money on, kind of thing. And we were happy to do all of the above. But I think what we were trying to do was direct support for bands that we were like passionate about or we really enjoyed. We toured more than any other bands. We toured with Gloria This from Pensacola. Toured with them a bunch, Indianola Brethren, good dudes, and just loved those tours because we were having a blast all the time. And we also toured a lot with a band from the North Carolina area called Secret Lives of the Freemasons.
Yeah. Great band.
Toured with them a ton. Oh, So I think what I really liked about them is that I could tell their influences, but nobody sounded like them.
Yeah.
You know, like there weren't other bands that were just like them, and so they were doing good things too. And they put out a record on Victory as well. And so we toured with them for a while and bounced around, did some sort of Calico System in the Burning season, and then we ended up getting a couple of decent sized tour offers, and we had just switched agencies, right? We were with Thunderdome touring for a while, and he was really good about getting us on shows all the time, you know, like keeping us busy, which was great. But we were hoping to get bigger tours, and so we moved up to a different booking agency, TKO Booking, and they were able to help us get some of those bigger shows. So
I think he was at TKO. Yeah.
Yeah. So Ash was the guy, but he I don't know what it was early on before I joined the band. I think Drew had made him mad, and so he didn't take him into his like stable of bands, you know, like the bands that he took and pushed him up. I don't know for sure, but so he had one of his like assistants kind of hang on to us, you know, like, and it was fine. We still got some pretty good tours, but there was something weird. I could never explain what it was, and I don't know. And so we did that for a while and got some pretty decent tours. We were on tour for a while with the Acacia Strain in Caliban, which was really fun. Vince from the Acacia Strain is a vocalist. I love that dude. He's got a stage presence that is to be envied. Like he knows what he's doing, and I learned a lot from him. We toured with the Banner a bunch from New Jersey. Love Banner. We were with them when Victory was talking to us about that record, and got to do some international stuff. So we went overseas the first time and toured with the Hurt Process and some other bands, Parachutes from over there. Some bands that were bigger, in Europe. And
that's awesome, dude.
And rode that wave, had a really good time with it. And then we ended up. There's a band called The Receiving End of Sirens that their guitar player ended up booking for us for a while, and he got us on some really strange but big tours. You know, like we did. We were on tour with Dope and Kitty for a while. Oh. That was fun. Yeah, it was. Kitty was awesome, but metal legends, and they were so welcoming and like opened up their arms to us and like really kind. And Dope could have cared less. And I don't think it was a little bit of a rock star thing, but we had played a tour with them that ended in Chicago, and we knew Tony was coming out. Tony Brummel from Victory was coming out, and we wanted to impress him. This big show, 3,000 cap rooms, 3 to 6 cap rooms, and it was a big show, and we played a pretty good set, and he was pretty excited about it. And then Dope headlined that show, and I forget the guy's name that sings for him, and he was like, "I just learned that there was another band on this bill, Across something. Anyway, this is our next song," and that was it. And that was the only interaction I ever had with him. And I remember being annoyed by that, but I guess had big stuff going. Yeah, it was a jerky thing to do, but who cares? I'm sure he had bigger fish to fry at the time. What a dope move! What a total dope.
Well, you mentioned Victory. That's the next logical step. How does Victory come into the picture? At the time, they are the Kings. Really, if you think about it, so many pivotal records.
They were
being a part of that. I'm sure that was mind-boggling. What was what other labels were interested in? Why Victory?
When we were thinking about recording Collapse, we had talked to some labels just to kind of feel the waters, and Victory was one of them. And Drew had actually flown to Chicago to meet with Tony to talk to him about it. And that was right when Atreyu was getting really big. And Tony made a comment that didn't sit well with Drew. And Drew would tell you the story differently because he's a different cat. But I wonder how differently that meeting would have gone if I had been with him. I'm a people person. Drew will tell you he's the old man in the band. And I guess at some point Tony made a comment about like, how would you feel about wearing makeup? And Drew was not having it. And I think that turned him off to Victory early on. And so that was always in the back of our head that was happening. So when we were done touring off of Collapse, we were wanting to do another record, and we had the same conversation. Should we shop around? Is the band done? Like, is this all we have to offer? And we were talking to a few different bands. We talked to labels. We talked to Abacus for a little bit, and Abacus was interested. And I think they would have signed us and put out a record. the only reason we didn't go with them is that Victory offered us a little bit more to record, and not that we needed the money, but we wanted to do something bigger, and we thought that maybe that was the way to go. And a couple of other bands that we respected ended up on Abacus, and somebody had made a comment that Abacus is where good bands go to die, and I remember thinking, oh, that can't be true, and sure, it's not true. They're a wonderful record label, but I that stuck in my head, and so we were also talking to oh gosh, what's the Equal Vision? We were talking to Equal Vision for a little bit, and we really liked the cred that Equal Vision had, and our manager at the time had shopped them some stuff that was like demos from the new stuff, and we're kind, but they were like, we don't get it, it's not for us. And we were also talking a little bit to Trustkill. Our guitarist Adam at the time had a relationship with the guys at Trustkill, and they were it would have been cool to be with Trustkill because they're a fun record label and good dudes, but they were a little hands off, and maybe we felt that they wouldn't give us what we were needing in the form of hand holding, and so Victory came in kind of late. Like, we were gonna sign with Abacus, and Victory came in kind of late, and they were like, hold on, if you're gonna sign with Abacus, let me make you a pitch. And Tony was the one talking to me, and I was like, okay, well, we'll hear it. And he gave us one of those record label deals back in the day that were like way too big, but you get big eyes from, Victory was the largest independent record in the country, independent label in the country. And they were until they disbanded, I believe. They got bought out by some giant conglomerate. But we looked at the record and we just went, why not? And we were on tour with the Banner at the time, and I was hanging out with their singer Joey, and he was looking at it with me, and he was just like, you just got to do it. Why would you say no to this? And I was like, okay. I think that, I respected him at the time, and he meant a lot to me. And I remember thinking, yeah, let's give it a shot. And they did like the A Day to Remember deal. It was like something ridiculous, like 10 records or something like that, which no hardcore, but they do it in the hope that like one of the bands that they sign is going to go big. So they had signed us, Secret Lives, and Dead to Fall all at the same time, kind of thing, and some other bands too. And they released all of our records at the same time. And I think their goal was to see which one did the best to push their money. Yeah. And they were, Victory got a lot of bad press back in the day. And I think some people still have a bad taste in their mouth with Victory and Tony in general. And I understand that. I respect that. I can tell you that they were nothing but professional with us. We had no issues with Victory ever. That's cool. None. Yeah, they were always really nice. And I guess the only kind of rub that we had with him at all, and I liked Tony a lot. He's a different cat for sure, but I really enjoyed him. He invited us to stay at his house, and he apparently never does that. He was like, you guys come on up here in Chicago, stay at my house. And his house was bonkers. It was not like a mansion, so to speak, but imagine that you drove up to what you thought was like an abandoned mall, and then the floor is that like rotating floor so your car can be parked any way you want it. You just show up, and he had like a waterfall, and it was like one level, but like really updated and modern, and it did not look like a house at all. And when we got there, he had some of the pre-production that we had done. He was playing the song in photographs that we recorded on repeat like 100 times, and he's like skanking around the whole house, like going like, I'm sure he was high on something, but he like loved that song, and we had ideas of like having a different song be the single, and he just said, nope, this is the one, and that we acquiesced a little bit to that. That was the only real pressure we felt from Victory, though. But they were great. They gave us good tour support, and they had a team. So whenever we go to Chicago, they would roll out the red carpet and like take whatever you want, grab the merch, get what you need, and we really enjoyed them.
Amazing.
I mean, they were
That's
great.
Awesome. Well, yeah. I mean, that definitely. I'm sure for a band wanting that cred of sorts, I'm sure that probably felt good. You're getting on a label that so many bands at that time were trying to get on, so I'm sure that was thrilling for you guys. And you might have thought, hey, we're gonna blow up. I'm sure that is the case for a lot of bands.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that Victory was hoping we would too. Yeah, we did have that feeling. I felt a lot more pressure recording that record with Victory because of the Victory mission.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think we were just, it felt validation for sure. Like Victory, there's not a whole lot bigger than Victory. Majors is the next step. You get by a major. That's why they do these big 10 record deals. And so we were kind of hoping, I guess, early on that might be the case, that we'll either blow up and, be able to ride that train till the wheels fall off, or shop it to a major that could take us to whatever the next iteration is.
Yeah.
The next level, yeah. And we use that as a platform to get on some bigger tours and some more international stuff, and went to Japan and, again, had a really good time with them. Oh, we had some offers with Mudvayne and like some shows like that. Yeah, it was interesting, and we got a bigger venue. It was interesting. I mean, I wouldn't trade it for the world. I think Victory comes with the clout of being a huge record label, and some maybe promoters don't know exactly what that means for a band that they may have never heard of or is up and coming kind of thing. So they're like willing to throw us on any kind of random show to appease the powers that be at Victory. So I remember we played shows with like Wheatus.
Oh, wow, yeah.
You remember Wheatus? Yeah. Teenage. Yeah. And some really interesting shows that probably shouldn't have happened, or fests that probably shouldn't happen, but we were able to hop on them because we had that Victory logo on our record.
Well, let's talk about Life Underwater record that you obviously put out on Victory. Maybe thoughts, memories from recording that, and what that was like for you guys.
Yeah. Life Underwater, intentionally, we wanted it to be a much heavier, darker record. So we changed the tuning and even in the artwork, and wanted it to be much heavier. We had toured a bunch with Acacia Strain at the time, so we were already influenced by darker, kind of heavier music anyway. And, we wanted to find that balance of like, the song and vocals that I can do clean, and the heaviness. And I feel like we hit that on the head pretty good. The only track on that record that I think sticks out is In Photographs. I just kind of have this hook in my head on how I wanted to, write those lyrics and have that hooky part. So I don't feel bad that it's on the record at all, but it's definitely, it's different. It's different than all the rest of the stuff on that record. It's not as dark. It's not as heavy. But it was fun to be able to do like music videos and stuff for that one. And we were in the studio for a month with Matt Goldman in Atlanta, and a really good guy, and loved what he was doing. And he had done a lot of really influential records that we looked up to. And he had just finished recording the Chariots record. What is it? Come Now Sleep? Is that the record?
City's Burn.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about. I'm sorry. Yeah, As Cities Burn record, Come Now Sleep, and being really impressed with the quality of production.
Yeah.
It's so good. And we wanted to do, I guess we wanted the Matt Goldman touch. We wanted to be able to sound like, a more mature sound, with kind of deeper guitar tones. And he got it right away, and he was really into like the nitty gritty of it all. So we were able to put some instruments on that. Like there's a Rhodes on there at one point in one of the songs, My Sense Heaven. And we did some really interesting things with drums on that record, almost like a rock drum kind of setup, really, really proud of that record. And Steve Wooten, who's with Half Mercy right now, did drums on that record. And he'll tell you that he came in not having a real solid like hardcore foundation, and so he was excited to try something new, and just crushed it. Like brought this like rock element to it that like gave us the bounce. You know what I mean by the bounce, like the kind of like that the groove that can make you kind of bounce at a hardcore show. And I just loved it. And we played a lot with like bass drops and 808s and things like that. Job for a Cowboy was really big at the time, and they were the masters at it. And I was so in love with those like big stereo rattling bass drops, and I wanted more and more of them. And I kept fighting, but Steve was, this is how many we're allowed, Brandon. This is how many we're going to do. But again, just wanted it to be a heavier and darker record. But I love some of those tracks. Pray for Rain, I love that record. That song, Pray for Rain, is great. This Means Not Welcome is a fun song. My favorite on the record, I think, is Snape. Snape Kills Dumbledore. That song is fun. It's a really fun song to play live. It's got this fun bounce to it that kids can get into and jump around. Just really, the record did pretty well, I think, for what we expected it to do. And Victory was pleased with it. They weren't unhappy with it. They were happy with where it was. And when we started talking about what the follow-up was, that's when we kind of decided to call it quits.
Real quick, did it turn out the way you wanted it to, or better than you expected? Because it sounds like it was not too far off from what you guys thought. It sounds like.
I think it turned it out exactly what we wanted it to be. There were two members of the band that had kind of been with us for a while. So Steve was the new drummer and Adam was the new guitar player. And so it was, me and Zach kind of writing a lot of the vocal parts to it, with the help of the other guys, and Josh too, helping with some of the writing. And so we had this relationship that from touring a lot, and they were really, I should say the majority of the guys were really okay with letting us run with it. So it felt really authentic that record came to fruition. Again, I wanted it to be darker, and the artwork for it's kind of interesting. So we they don't give me I shouldn't say they don't give me, but in a band, we all have different dynamics, and everybody has the hill that they want to die on kind of thing. But I hadn't had a whole lot of say in the art direction of the band. I'm not a super artistic guy with pen and paper anyway. And I remember wanting really bad to have a say in the artwork for it, because I can appreciate art, but obviously can't create it. As far as, pen and paper stuff. So I really loved what Derek Hess was doing back in the day. He put his stuff on everything. He's awesome, right? And I didn't want a Derek Hess because I felt like it had been done, and Dead to Fall had done it, and I didn't want to step on anybody's toes. But I did want something like from that genre. So I was talking to his people, and they had turned us on to a Cleveland-based artist named Steven Kasner. And he's passed away since he did our artwork, but his stuff is something else, man. It's like he was touched from an alien being or something. Like, it doesn't look, it's so pretty, but there's despair in his art. You have to go kind of appreciate it. He did a lot of like ravens and dark animal life and birds like that. And so when I got to talk to him, I was telling him kind of our idea for the record. I was like, it's heavy. It's like some of the songs and the lyrics are really heavy hearted. And he heard that, and that's where the record cover came from. It's the snakes on it. And he did a really good job with it. And I remember being really proud that I had some say in cool. that, and so that became kind of our marketing logo for a while, was the cover
that's
of that
really
record.
Cool, dude. I love that you got to do, something that, like you said, you're not primarily the person that does that or deals with that, but you had an input on that.
It did. It was nice.
You mentioned this record comes out. It does okay. Victories seems stoked on it, and then you're no more. What the heck happened? And how the heck do you get out of a 10 contract deal?
Yeah, but it's interesting you should say that. Yeah, so the record was doing okay, and to be totally honest with you, we probably could have stuck around and been a mid-level band for a while. It's not like we weren't getting decent tours, but we would still have to work, side jobs and stuff when we'd get home, to make ends meet. It's not like we were, living high on the hog and being able to, tour in a bus or anything. Well, we had a bus for a little bit, but it was a terrible financial decision. But we were on tour. We were in Japan with Evergreen Terrace, and on the flight back, the shows were great. They were big shows, and it was really fun. The kids singing along, and on the way back, I just remember talking to all the guys on the same row, and we were kind of came to this understanding of this is a lot of fun, but we're not over that hump. We haven't gotten to the place where we can really make this a lifestyle. And again, I think we may have been able to just stick it out. More power to those bands that get it done. Bane, sure. Figured it out, and they're not playing arenas necessarily, but they are comfortable and they love that lifestyle. And I think we could have done that. But there were, I can say it for myself. I wanted a wife and kids and the family and that thing, and it can be done and tour full time. But I didn't want that to be my kids' experience. I wanted to be home for my children and. Be the father that I know I had it in me to be. Again, I wanted to work with kids from a real young age, and that developmental part of it isn't lost on me. And so I think we could have done it and been gone for a few months and come back, but I don't know. I just didn't want that to be my experience. So we had that conversation about what does this look like 10 years down the road? Are we going to do this? Because we're not Aerosmith. We can't bring our kids on tour with us.
Thank God you're not.
We can't give them private tutors and things. And everybody just kind of said, you know what, I think you might be right. I think we're kind of at a stopping point. And when we got back, we talked about it some more to make sure that we didn't make any hasty decisions. and booked one final tour that went to all of our favorite places, and then ended in Chattanooga, and thought that would be our last show ever.
Wow, man. What was that like? Were you bummed? Were you excited for the future? Was that, a week or two after you're done, are you seeing all these tourists coming by and you're like, you miss it? Like, what was that like?
I still feel that way, man. I'll see somebody I know went on tour, and I'm like, oh, that could have been out, So I wasn't ever bitter about it, but it was bittersweet. I felt like our last show was at Club Fathom in Chattanooga, and it was huge. It was a really big show, and we had advertised it as our last show kind of thing, and it sold out. It was big, and we had tried to record it to make almost like a DVD kind of thing. We were going to do like a wrap it up DVD, like The Refused or Dead kind of thing, and it didn't come to fruition, but it felt magic and it felt right. So when the band came to an end, we were all super supportive of everybody else's next step or next endeavor. But I for sure had the itch, I missed, being on tour and what all the fun stuff that comes with that. But I didn't miss sleeping in a van every day. I didn't miss that. And I was kind of excited to pick up where I left off. If you recall, I had paused school, and I was always kind of an average anyway, and I think it was because I had gone to college thinking this is 13th grade, this is what you do. And so I kind of put half of my gut into it. But when I came back, I had this newfound excitement to do school again. And so I went back and finished with straight A's. That never happened. I'm not a straight A student, but so it was cool to think about priorities, and where my priorities were at the time. And felt like I was playing catch up for a while. Like a lot of my friends were already into their careers and professions, and so I was kind of starting from scratch a little bit. As soon as I got my degree, I was able to kind of get back into the groove, and I've found my comeuppance for sure. But I remember feeling like playing catch up for a while.
Totally.
But I still today will see my friends come through, or bands that I know that have people in them, and it's easy, especially through social media, to see what looks like they're living the dream, like they're high on life. But then you talk to them and you realize, they're figuring it out too, and it may not be, the perfect situation for them, but they are trying to make the best of what they're doing. And I think that's what anybody can do, no matter what your lot in life is.
Totally. What did Victory say when you said you guys were done? Were they like, oh?
Yeah, I was really nervous. And I remember sending that email to Tony, and he was so cool. He was like, nah, it's okay. I totally understand. These things happen. He did say something to the effect of, if you decide to do anything musical in the future, I get first stab at it. And I remember thinking, oh, that's awesome. If I want to do music, Victory's going to listen to me. I doubt he would have, but I think it was more of a marketing ploy for him. Like, I get first stab in case it's going to be the next big thing. And so we went in hiatus for a while, and Victory got bought out by a huge conglomerate, right? So the joke we make now is that technically we're label mates with Phil Collins and the Beatles, So that's kind of fun. It can't be that, right?
That's incredible.
We called them when we started doing some reunion shows. I was like, how do I get some of that old merch? Where can I get Life Underwater if we want to sell it at shows? Or really what I wanted to find out was, how can I get permission to record stuff again? Because Tony's sold it. He's done. He's not doing anything with me, to my knowledge. And everybody that we talked to, all the A&R guys were like, I don't know, man. You can try to reach out to them, but who knows what's going to happen? And we reached out to everybody we could think of, and nobody had any idea. So we finally got a hold of somebody at Concordia, I think is the name of the place that bought out Victory. And as soon as they found out we weren't a Day to Remember, didn't care what all we did with our records. They were like, do whatever you want.
That's amazing.
But they didn't know where the warehouse was or anything. So they didn't have any tangible anything to give us. But we did get in writing that they don't care if we record anything else. So we were like, okay, we heard you. And we haven't talked to them.
That's incredible. I love that.
Yeah.
So you guys have obviously reunited over the years, and I know you wound up playing a pre-show for Furnace Fest this past year with Bane, which was really cool. How was that show, and what's it been like to kind of get back together and kind of get up back on the horse?
Those Furnace Fest guys are so good to us. They are the best. A5A has played Furnace Fest, and Embrace, by the way, has played Furnace Fest 4 years until, the early ones and the new ones. So when Furnace Fest first had its resurgence, a few years ago, I'm forgetting 2020 maybe, they were saying, they reached out and they asked us to play, and we were like, yeah, of course, we absolutely would want to. And it felt so good to be not only like validated in that way to be able to play Furnace Fest, but also to be able to play the stage, the shed. That's the one you want to play. That is all the other stages are great, but that's the place you want to be, and where all of our contemporaries play, and you feel validated. But they also asked Embrace to play too. We couldn't do it that. Yeah, they asked Embrace to open up a Shai Hulud Zayo show, I think is what it was. And everybody was on board, but somebody had Steve runs a videography company, and he had booked like a really high-end wedding that he couldn't get out of. And they've never asked us since. I know. But every year we keep our fingers crossed. We're just like, yeah, we're here if you need us. But Embrace did play Furnace Fest back in the day. I've got pictures of it, and like Aaron from Under Oath is in the background with a big cheesy grin. So I know we're there. But yeah, A5A was asked to play, and of course we said yes right away. And every year that they've done it, they've always extended something to us. Maybe not the fest itself. Again, we played the fest twice, but one year they asked us to do the benefit show with Darkest Hour, and Capra and a bunch of other really good bands on that bill. It was so much fun. And then this past year was really interesting because it was the surprise show with Bane. And I'm a good secret keeper. You know what I mean? Like, if you tell me something and you tell me it needs to be a secret, I don't tell anybody. I'm not that guy. And so when they had offered us the show, it was under, pain of death, right? Like, you can't tell anybody. If you do, we'll kick you off the bill. And so I heard them loud and clear, and I was like, we just want to be a part of it. Won't say anything. So we were doing a little run, like 3 or 4 days with our buddies in the showdown leading up to it. And we had known for forever, And they actually offered us the From Autumn to Ashes show first, but we had already committed to the Showdown tour, and we just love those guys, and so we didn't want to back out of that. And then they came back with that Shai Hulud secret show, and so we were like, yeah, done. And so we didn't say anything, but at some point, Furnace Fest leaks like a sieve, and everybody finds it out at some point. Davey and his wife were like, we're hearing grumblings of something about Furnace Fest, and I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know. Well, I mean, we'll be there. And then everybody knew that we were going to be there. And they're like, so you're coming to Furnace Fest with all your gear and merch? We're like, it's just on the way. They're like, no, it's not. It's not on the way to Florida. And so when it came out, I felt relief that I could tell people, but that was so much fun. I love everything that Furnace Fest does. They're so smart and tactical about like how they put things together, but they told us that they were going to announce that the second the last band played on that Saturday night, I think is what it was. And it was not a super big room, which was part of the draw for that show. Like, Bane has been on some really big bills and really big, stages, but this was meant to be like a small club show, like back in the day with Bane. Embrace played some small club shows with Bane in DC back in the day too. Wow. So we kind of but when they offered that to us, the appeal was Bane, and there's some other great bands on that bill too, right? Orthodox. Yeah. And I remember being excited about it, but I didn't know how it would go. It's a midnight show, starts at midnight, and then it sold out in 7 minutes. Like, I think it was like a 600 cap or something. So it wasn't a huge venue, but it was a great show. We played a really good set, and just really enjoyed that experience. And they could not have been more gracious, because they know that they're kind of the kings of what they do, and to allow us to hang out with them was great, to kind of be validated in that way, right?
Absolutely, man. That's amazing.
These are our people.
That's so cool, dude. That's amazing. New record on the horizon by chance? Anything you guys thinking about doing anything?
Yeah, that's, depending on who you ask, you might get different answers, right? But yes, we have been playing around with the idea of new music, and it's so makes you salivate, I know, but it's tough, because I have to manage my expectations every time I think about it, because we're just all in different places. We're all professionals doing our real jobs, but we all want it to happen. But I would say we all have different timelines of that's going to happen. So we've done some pre-production already, everything except for vocals basically, but I've been writing it and have some good ideas. But what we have about 6 songs right now that we intend to record at some point. And I think they sound great. Like, they're heavy and they're catchy and sing-along kind of stuff, But I don't know. I don't know is the short answer. I hope that it does. Drew, our drummer, is kind of the mastermind for recording it, and he just finished doing a record for his other side project, a band called New Rituals. And now that that's done, Jason and some of the other people in A5A are like, okay, what about our turn? Are we next? And I think he's got to get over that. Okay, he's got to get back into the mind frame of being ready to record and what that from an A5A record. But I think we'll probably put something out. I don't know if it'll be. Indianola has reached out and said we'll put anything you want out.
That's amazing.
But and we might do that. But I think probably what we'll do is release a couple of songs on streaming platforms just to see what the appetite is, and then kind of go from there.
Absolutely, that sounds exciting, man. Let me ask you real quick before we wind down. What record and what song are you most proud of?
What record, song? I guess I would say I'm most proud of the record Collapse, because it was kind of like me proving to myself that I could do it again. And, you know, again, I'm in a much more mature place now, but stick it to the Embrace guys a little bit. And I'm sure they don't think about it that way. I'm glad we're in a good place now, but I was proud of that record. I love playing Snape Kills Dumbledore live because I think it means something different to people that love that song, you know, and when they hop on stage and they come sing along and they're walking on heads, it reminds me of like a 20-year-old Brandon recording hardcore records for the first time. So I think I guess I would say I'm most proud of that song. I really enjoyed the Collapse record. I also really enjoy, we never play it live. It's one of those, you would have to have a specific setup to play it, but we have a song on Life Underwater called My Sins Stacked to Heaven. And I really love my layered vocals at the end of that song. It's just kind of like easy and harmonic. And again, never played it live, but would love to. Like Jason and I talk about doing, and it's still on our website, we've just never been asked to do an acoustic show, you know? And I think that we have it in us to do, I know it sounds strange, A5A acoustic, but I think we have 6 songs that we could adapt to be acoustic, and then we would throw in some covers and some jamming with water stuff, and I think is what I would do. So one of these days we'll do it, but I think that's my answer to that question.
That's awesome. Well, I know you've kind of alluded to the future somewhat, but I know you can't predict the future, but what do you think the future looks like for you overall?
For me or the band?
For you.
I think for me, I think what I would love to happen is I would love to continue to teach 4th and 5th grade for a very long time. I would love to do it overseas. I'd love to teach somewhere like in Thailand or Singapore or something like that, to expose my children who are young to a more worldview. Sometimes in the South you can get stuck in this really pigeonholed mentality, and I just want them to know that the world's big. But I would imagine I'm going to stay in education. I love what I do and try really hard to raise my kids to love me and be good to my wife. That's what I plan on doing.
Wow, that's amazing. I love that. I love hearing that. I can hear the passion in your voice, so it's cool to, just know that you have this vision ahead of you that you want to attain. I think that's cool, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, Brandon. I know it's been, like I said, a long time coming, but I'm really stoked to have talked to you and hear your story, and just really honored that you spent time with me. Hey, thank you, listener, for tuning in again and again. I really, really appreciate it. It's been an honor. If you'd like to add me on Instagram and Facebook at the Rumors Are True Cast. If you'd like to like and subscribe, you know the drill. Thank you again to Brandon Mullins. Awesome conversation. So stoked to have talked to you, get to know you over the last couple months. So thank you again to Brandon Mullins. Got some incredible artists, guys, on the horizon, and you know it. Nostalgia is still a heck of a drug. The podcast is produced by Wesley Hill, artwork by Jared Chase Bowser, and music by Brian Jaron. This episode is dedicated to the memory of my dear friend, producer, and man of many talents, Brian Jaron.